Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the official home of power mining analysis. A big rebound in the price of Bitcoin overnight. The Bitcoin mining stocks are off to the races today in trading. We're going to be covering that on today's podcast, along with a plethora of news in the Bitcoin mining sector. Before we get into it, take a second, hit the like button, you guys. Big help to myself and the channel. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comments section below how you're feeling about the miners and what you thought of today's news. With that being said, let's get into today's video. All right, Anthony. Well, what a contrast to yesterday's podcast. Bitcoin has recovered tremendously overnight. We're going to be talking about that. First off, the miners following suit in a big way, absolutely off to the races today with green across the board. So I guess 24 hours can make quite a big difference in Bitcoin land here, Anthony. We talk about volatility, but boy, this was a big comeback.
Yeah, and it seemed to start literally minutes after the podcast was finished. So maybe our timing was a little bit out, yes. But actually, the podcast yesterday was more about revenues for miners. We've noticed hash rate coming off. We've noticed hash price dropping as low as $50 per petahash, and that can't be great for miners going forward. We need the Bitcoin price to go up, and we saw a nice 3 or 4% bounce yesterday. It's sort of stabilized today in that 105,000 range, so between 105,000 up to 106,000. And the miners have sort of come out nice and green today, so that's a good sign. They managed to recover a little bit yesterday because they started the day when we were doing the podcast. It was predominantly red, and then we saw a few miners coming back towards the end of the day with best performance. And then today it's like a nice green day. So the chart there's quite clear. If you look at the position for even looking at 5 and the 1 month change there's a lot more green on there. There's only 2 miners though from a year-to-date position that are showing any positivity. And that's CleanSpark and IREN. CleanSpark up by 5% year to date, and IREN up by 16% year to date. IREN's had a really good rally the last sort of 5 or 6 weeks, actually, to be honest with you. It's really built up some momentum. There's a lot of people posting about IREN, and hopefully a client's going to be named for their HPC. So a lot of momentum out there. They've also got this target to reach for 50, and we'll talk about CleanSpark's target a little bit later in the podcast. So some good news coming up for that one there. But that momentum has drove that share price to a certain extent now that IREN actually flipped CleanSpark in terms of market capitalization today. And IREN don't have 12,500 Bitcoin in the treasury. So that's an interesting analogy to look at the fact that they don't hodl Bitcoin. So the market's giving them probably a lot of more premium for the fact this HPC deal in the future looks to be, positive in terms of Dan's comment by, we'll have a client name by the end of Q4. The market must be given a little bit of premium for that, and once they do announce, I'm assuming then we'll see a bit more of a spike in the share price. But it's been a good day for Brian. It's been a good 5 days for Brian. Look at that, 17% over that period there. So really looking good.
Yeah, no kidding. So I guess Horizon 1, Sweetwater 1 and 2, and a potential HPC contract is worth around 12,500 Bitcoin based on what the market is giving these stocks. But interesting, you talk about the market cap flipping there, and I'm sure we'll do a follow-up on that one later in the week, Anthony. Now, I mentioned in the intro a plethora of news. Miners are in the green today, and they've, in many cases, come out with some strong press releases here. So we're going to go through in alphabetical order. The first up is Bit Digital. So another big announcement. Now, we just had Sam Tabar on the program. He alluded to some structural or foundational changes within the business organization itself, talking multiple times about mortgage financing, this being really the next frontier to finance these very expensive, CapEx intense Tier 3 data centers. Today, coming out with a $60 million credit facility with the Royal Bank of Canada. That's actually my bank, the biggest bank in Canada for data center expansion.
Yeah, it's a confirmation of what we were expecting from the company. The way that Bit Digital have been doing a lot of their deals in terms of even at HPC purchases as well is they initially bought them and then they've leased done leaseback deals, so they get the capital out of those machines and are able to use that to drive the next project forward. And this is great. I mean, White Fiber have obviously, purchased the facilities. They've obviously refurbished them, to get ready for, installing machines into them. And then can go to a bank then and say, look, this is what the finished product is. And the analogy I can use here is, I mean, it's probably the same in your neck of the woods, but in the UK, people are buying commercial buildings or buying even residential buildings, investing into it, and then getting the banks to give the valuation and those types of properties a higher valuation, so they're able to then extract more money out of that project and basically leverage that project with some debt. But then they've got the cash then to go on to the next project and sort of build from that there. As long as you can make sure the payments are reasonable. And if you look at the interest rate here, it clearly states it carries interest rates of Cora plus 250 basis points. So Cora at the moment is 2.75%, add on 2.5%, so that's 5.25%. So it's $3.15 million in interest payments per year. But that's allowed them to extract a significant amount of money out of that deal there, the 60 million, to now go and use that to do whatever it might be, to go and buy some GPUs, maybe look at the next building, maybe from refurbished costs, but to use as the company desires there. But everything that Bit Digital have been doing, to be honest with you, is to grow its business. And, when we first started talking to Sam 18 months ago, they had literally one client in the HPC space. That was a big client. It was a 50 million a year client. No other miner, even to now, is delivering 50 million of annualized revenues. I mean, Core Scientific might be getting on the way now. They just energized a part of Denton, but it's only a small amount. That will grow for the rest of the year. But Sam did this a year ago. Now he's got 23, 24 clients on the go now. So you can see how that business model's grown there. You can see why he decided to make White Fiber a subsidiary of Bit Digital, to give its own identity, because the market just doesn't appear to be giving Bit Digital any credibility for the fact they've got this fantastic HPC business model.
No, it certainly doesn't. And I know Sam's expressed frustration about that on multiple interviews. So hopefully this is that structural shift that was needed to start that re-rating process. But you're right, we've seen White Fiber come out with some big building announcements. Now the financing, it seems all the pieces are coming together for Sam and team. Now the next one, Anthony, more of a housekeeping here, Bitdeer. I'll let you get a quick update out on them in relation to their $330 million convertible note raise.
Yeah, so we talked about this on previous podcasts, but yesterday they actually issued the legal agreement with US Bank Trust as a trustee, raising an initial $330 million through a convertible note with interest of 4.875%. Now, there is an option to sell an additional 45 million, so that'll take it to 375 million. We know from history, a lot of the Bitcoin mining companies where they've got that option to increase it normally do increase it. So we can expect to have 375, close to 400 million in terms of convertible note there at 4.8 there. So you can see interest rate there is going to be around about $18 million a year. So that's a significant amount of interest, but you can see what they're using it for there. They're going to use it for the data center expansion. Remember, they've got some big sites in the US there that can be utilized for data centers, the ones in Ohio spring to mind. They're also looking to grow their ASIC mining business in terms of what they're developing with the seal miner. So they've already are literally getting the A3s now to production. They've done all the testing. That's come out really well. We've seen that it's like market leading in terms of what that machine can do. And now the focus on delivering the seal miner A4, which should be sort of like early 2026. So they need funding for that. I remember speaking to Bitdeer and we've asked them about, the funding costs. They had sort of like well over 50 in the team there for developing these ideas, and that comes at a price. I mean, it's a significant amount, but it will bear fruit, because we know that these machines that they're able to produce at the moment, and we know what miners are paying for hash rate. Bitdeer are able to produce these machines significantly less than what miners are paying at the moment. So they've got the choice of either selling the machines and making a nice profit margin. If the customers don't want them, they've got 40 exahash to fill at their site to get that hash rate up towards where it needs to be at the end of the year. So they'll be using, both of those strategies to deliver either more cash flow or more hash rate. And more hash rate will deliver more Bitcoin, hence more revenues that way. So, they've got a nice two-pronged attack there. This is just a confirmation today, but another good update from a miner looking to use an additional lever to raise money.
Yeah, really a win-win in the Bitdeer situation in terms of the ASIC production or sales. It seems the name of the game now, Anthony. We talked about aggressive exahash growth targets last year. Then we talked about energy pipeline. Now it seems financing and raising capital is really the flavor of the month in the Bitcoin mining space. But for me, the most incredible thing with Bitdeer is the speed of delivery of these new machines to market. You think about even industry leaders like Apple maybe putting out an iPhone once a year, MicroBT, Canon. They're able to put out 3 iterations of the Seal Miner this year, and as you say, the fourth hot on their heels. So just incredible. Now, the next update here, a big one. So we've talked about Black Pearl extensively on the channel. We had Tyler Page on. He was talking about this back in 2024. This is really the crown jewel of the Cipher mining portfolio. It's finally come to fruition here, Anthony. They've energized the first component of this. I'll let you walk through the details, then we can take a look at the slide deck that I guess precursored this announcement.
Yeah, I'm just going to pick you up on that crown jewel because I personally think the view from Tyler's office is the crown jewel in Cyphers. I mean, he's in the Vanderbilt building in New York, and we've had the pleasure of been invited to that office to have a chat with the team there, and we were blown away. It's a fantastic view of the city there. I've not seen many offices like that. And so very fortunate they managed to get into that building. I think, probably when COVID occurred and rents across New York had dropped there, so they're able to get a really good deal because it's a phenomenal office building. I would bite my left arm to go and work in somewhere like that. But you're quite right. Black Pearl, we've talked about Black Pearl for quite a while now. This is a project that's been going for 18 months and now we're seeing it energized. And it comes in a number of phases. So phase one is going to deliver 150 megawatts. So the site's energized, not necessarily all the power on the site because it's a total of 300 megawatts on the site. But they've actually got a hash rate increase of 2.5 exahash. So they've announced that there. That takes them up to a total of 16 exahash. And they've got now another 3 months to add an additional 7.1 exahash. And when they do that, that will take their target to the end of Q3 at 23.1 exahash. So they'll be putting some of the most, newest, most efficient mining machines. It'll be good to understand how this next few months will affect their efficiency rate. They're already under 20 joules per terahash, so they're one of the most efficient fleets out there. But if you're going to start putting new machines into this new site here, that efficiency rate will come down even further, heading towards the likes of CleanSpark and IREN, who are currently leading the pack at 15 joules a terahash. A really good update. This is on the cards here. Now, this site at 300 megawatts, it can be used totally for Bitcoin mining, but obviously Tyler is very keen to go down the HPC co-location route. And this might, with 300 megawatts and not all being utilized by mining, it allows them to be to utilize different strategies. So they might actually be able to use a co-location site here. And going back to the likes of what Adam said recently in terms of customers in the future, he seems to think 70 to 100 megawatts of compute power. Now you need to add on some ancillary power to that. This 150 megawatts remaining at Black Pearl could be ideal for that type of a client moving in there. So it keeps Tyler and the company's options really open. So it'll be interesting to see how this develops. But bear in mind, they've got a number of other sites to also put HPC. Some of these 200 megawatt parcels of land that they purchased, 6 months ago when we talked about that through the podcast there. So they've not only got Black Pearl, they've got a number of other sites. What we're saying about Black Pearl is the fact is that's had more development on that site. So if a client came up quickly and needed that power, it's in Texas. Power costs are pretty low there. It could be an ideal situation. So watch this space and see if we get some more updates on that potential 150 megawatts phase two, what that's going to be utilised for.
Yeah, definitely one to keep an eye on. And you can see in the investor deck here exactly what they had stated, delivering on commitments in terms of their Q2 delivery and that full 9.6 exahash in Q3. So some big growth for Cipher. Another company delivering on their investor deck promises, CleanSpark, achieving the 50 exahash milestone. So we made reference to the battle of CleanSpark IREN in the intro here. We would expect a similar announcement from IREN any day now. But congrats to CleanSpark on this really monumental achievement.
Yeah, so they've reached this target earlier than expected, and to be honest with you, they're a company that have delivered on many targets over the last few years. They've grown significantly over the last 2 years there. I mean, go back just over 2 years ago, there was 6.2 exahash. Now they're showing at 50 exahash. They've achieved that target well before the date expected there. And what this means is that their infrastructure itself, it spans up. We've talked about this before, spans over 30 locations across the US, and it emphasizes the company's sustainability, resilience, and scalability of their Bitcoin mining model. They are staying in the Bitcoin mining space. They've got no expectation of moving into HPC. They're probably the real true blue miner out there, and we'll also, I think, Mara Holdings also are maybe in that same belt there, but they're looking to maybe work alongside HPC to utilize power when power is available. The CEO Zach has highlighted that the growth's been deliberate there. It's for them, for their expectation, it's going to create long-term shareholder value, and it positions CleanSpark as a leader in the mining space. They're close on the heels now of Mara's total at the moment, 58.3. And CleanSpark announced recently that their future expansion is going to be to 60 exahash and beyond. And to get that, they're going to drive the efficient operations and growth opportunities that come along their way. Alongside that, they've also got a phenomenal treasury with over 12,500 Bitcoin, and they've actively monetized that, and it's generating yield since May. So that's a nice update as well. The fact they're getting a bit of a return now on that Bitcoin hodl. And we've asked other miners about that. Are they going to look at that? And so we've got one miner here who's quite clearly wanting to put their Bitcoin to work, and why not?
Most definitely. And we'll talk about some of those Bitcoin collateralized loans a little bit later in the presentation as well. So, going to be interesting to see if and when IREN comes out with their update, Anthony, if they try and one up CleanSpark and potentially go above 50 or come in right at the 50 level. But very interesting to compare these companies in terms of market cap and the different strategies that they deploy. Another interesting one that we've heard a lot from in recent months here, Anthony, is Hive, specifically Buzz HPC, their subsidiary, today launching another NVIDIA GPU Hopper cluster. So this is another step in the right direction, ultimately towards that 100 million ARR goal by year end.
Yeah, so again, it's another. I mean, we seem to be getting an update from Hive every other day at the moment. In case they've got the Bitcoin mining going on in Paraguay, that's been ramping up 1 exahash literally every week for the last 5 or 6 weeks. They're also focusing on that dual strategy of HPC. Now, unlike say CleanSpark and TeraWulf, Hive have been using more of an on-demand service with the GPUs that they had from when they were mining Ethereum. Plus, they've added to that with some H100s, and now they're looking to having, made some purchases. We talked about the site purchase yesterday, and now they're talking about this new cluster featuring the NVIDIA Hopper GPUs, which, which these are high performance machines, and operating, near to full utilization since launch. So this would be great for the revenues coming. You're quite right. They've got this ambitious target, and it is an ambitious target. They're at $20 million annualized revenue now. The target is 100 million by the end of the year. Just to put that into context, if you look at the likes of TeraWulf and their Core 42 deal, when they're fully operational, that will deliver probably about $100 million a year in revenues. And that's a 60 megawatt site with ancillary power. Now, that's going to need a lot more than what Hive's got at the moment. So we'll have to keep our lookout for how this is going to grow. But 100 million a year in annualized revenues is what Bit Digital are doing. So, if you get the customers in there and you can grow it well. I mean, it's took, Bit Digital well over, 12, coming on to 18 months to get to where they are now, but they are at 100 million annualized revenue. Sam conferred that on a previous podcast. Can Hive do the same? It's going to be a challenge, but when they came out and announced the purchase of Paraguay, that took the market by surprise. HPC could be another surprise where they sort of deliver exactly what they're saying to deliver. So I wouldn't underestimate Hive's ability to get there. Obviously, they've left 6 months to go that gap, but they set themselves a target, and let's see how they get on with it.
Yeah, most definitely. Another interesting point in the press release here, you can see they specifically start talking about some of the Canadian data sovereignty needs here, setting up AI-ready infrastructure in Canada, nationwide economic impact, a focus on renewable energy. So very similar narrative to what we heard from DMG, Sheldon Bennett, Stephen Eliscu when they were on the program last, and their partnership with the Malahat Indigenous group. So these companies that operate in Canada, obviously competing for our own sovereign data needs in light of some of the tensions, I guess I'll say, with the United States. So interesting to see these different strategies evolve to serve the market dynamics here. Now, another one we're continuing to watch evolve is Hut 8. So they've come out with some big news, obviously, with ABTC or American BTC. We also had that press release that came out in relation to their AI HPC location. However, that's still unconfirmed by the company. Today, they've come out with some news in a relation to a Coinbase Bitcoin-backed loan. So again, using the Bitcoin to good use here, Anthony, and deploying some of that stack.
Yeah, so they already had a Bitcoin-backed loan with Coinbase for 65 million. Today they've announced they've doubled that to 130 million, and they are using Bitcoin as collateral for that loan there. So that's the normal way. The likes of Coinbase, the likes of Galaxy have been both in the market delivering these types of loans there. The interest rate, interestingly, is 9%, which for a Bitcoin-backed loan, I don't know if that's, we just talked about, some convertibles that other companies are having there, whether it's, where it's significantly lower than that, the Bitdeer one under 5%, and Bit Digital able to attract 5.2% on their mortgage loan against facilities that they own there. So 9%, is significant. Obviously, it's only 9% on the amount that you use. So it's a facility in place there. So it's getting, the amount of money if they need it. And when you think about, the Bitcoin mining industry, the high performance compute industry, they're capital intensive. And if a deal comes along, and we know that Hut 8, don't tend to rush out there and do things quickly. They tend to study first and then make the decision that is best for themselves, best for the shareholders. So, we've seen that over the last 3 years. They've started to update their fleets now. They're getting the prices that they wanted to, and maybe this loan will just, be there as an option to use it should a right deal come along. But with that, it's going to be interesting times with, like I say, with a subsidiary American Bitcoin mining company going to market as well and delivering their self-mining. Maybe some of this credit facility is going to be used to grow the HPC because we know that Hut 8 have got some certain strategies to move into that space there. And we've talked about the announcement that was made by the local community where Hut were planning to move into. We have nothing from the company in over 6 months. So I don't know if that's gone away or whether we're just waiting for all the paperwork to be signed off, but they've certainly, attracted a lot of interest towards the end of last year. And so maybe this is a sort of getting things ready there, getting capital in place, using as many different levers as you've got. Because end of the day, miners have used them ATMs over the last few years quite intensely to grow, and shareholders sort of probably feel that maybe companies ought to be starting using other levers available, and we've seen a lot of change in 2025 with regards to that. There's not as many using the ATM. I'm not going to say no one's using the ATM because that would be totally false. We know there's a few miners out there that will use it, and we'll know in the next quarterly earnings how much some of these miners have been using the ATM. So, but miners generally, with these announcements we've been coming out with over the last few months, it's been more about convertible loans, Bitcoin-backed loans, mortgages. It's more different types of debt, which appeals more to the retail investors. They want to see it in black and white there without having their shares diluted any further.
Yeah, most definitely. It'll be interesting. A lot going on under the surface there. Gryphon Mining also involved in that ABTC deal with a 2% allocation of the future company. We've talked about that on the channel as well. Now, another commingling here between our friends at Compass Mining and Soluna Holdings, Anthony, announcing an increase in their hosting partnership between these two organizations. So, another great press release here. And again, gaining traction on the revenue side of things for Soluna.
Yeah, so Soluna have announced today the 13 megawatts across Project Dorothy 1 and 2. And this is phase one of their next gen site. And effectively, Compass Mining have agreed to increase their size in that site there, which will take the total deployment to approximately 13 megawatts of compute power across those two locations. And so Compass Mining started its first deployment with Dorothy 1 back in 2023, later transitioning to Project Sophie. And this is great news for the likes of Soluna. We've talked about them. This market capitalization is still in them sort of like single digit millions in terms of USD market capitalization, and yet they're delivering, some really big projects out there. So we talked about Dorothy 1 and 2. We've talked about Project Sophie. There's Project Catty and others are coming on the production line there. They've got access to a lot of power available, but they're doing it in a sort of managed way. But they'll have this will be the first year they'll have two significant projects working at the same time to deliver those. And as soon as these projects come online, like this project now, like it's growing, the revenue should start appearing in their quarterly earnings and start showing the market that they're actually bigger than a $6-7 million company as the market perceives at the moment.
Yeah, indeed. That's one we talk about quite extensively on the channel, Anthony, and seems a lot of action or catalysts on the horizon for Soluna. Now, another one we've been talking about throughout the week here, Miner Madness 4.0. This is kicking off in the first week of July. Following a very successful Miner Madness 3.0, we saw a lot of money or theoretical money, I guess, being made in this competition. Miner Madness 4.0, though, Anthony, a new way to sign up using our newsletter, an automated entry. We've already got, I think, nearly 50 entries via that forum. And the new grand prize, an interview on the Power Mining Analysis platform that will be posted and featured not only on YouTube, but on the PMA website as well. So cementing your place in Bitcoin mining history, along with some of the greats. It should be a good competition. I know you and I already have our picks in. How are you feeling about it, Anthony?
Yeah, I feel it's going to be. I think we're in a perfect time now. Bitcoin price, 105,000 today. Miners in the green today. Let's see this Bitcoin price get to some of those heights in that next quarter, like some of these big analysts have been saying, the Cathie Woods, the Van Ex, the Anthony Pomplianos. These people have been putting big numbers out there for Bitcoin to get to, 180,000, 200,000. And at the moment we're at 105,000, so a lot of way to go there. If the prices get to those levels, then we'll see the Bitcoin miners certainly do well. And it's whether you've got the right three runners of the pack there. So we'll come out with more information as we get closer to the end of the week with more details. But it's been a totally different quarter than the previous quarter when everybody was in negative territory and not just by a small amount. I think the winner was still about 20% down on their $300 notional investment. So just goes to show gambling's not for everybody, folks.
No, it's sure not. Good riddance to that quarter. Hopefully, we can build on this momentum. And as you say, things looking quite rosy on the horizon for the Bitcoin miners. So, with that being said, you guys let us know what you think of today's news updates, how you're feeling about the portfolios. If you're still watching at this point, hit the like button. Feel free to subscribe. We'll see you back here tomorrow for a special interview with Luxor talking about derivatives and hash rate forward contracts. So, that should be a good one. Take care, you guys. Talk soon.